peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest episode of Good Trouble, the series where I engage in above-the-table conversations that I feel are necessary in the board gaming space in a spirit of education and compassion. This is a real talk about racism. What a spicy meatball of a title, and I really mean it. This is going to be a series of 3 videos. So this is the first one in which I'm going to reflect on 40 episodes, 1 year of Good Trouble. My first video was in January of 2021, colonization and board games, and it has kept on going from there. So I'm in a reflective mood in the holiday season 2021, thinking about coming to a summary point of so many of the items that I've discussed, and I'm looking forward to folks coming on this journey with me. But before I get to that, before I explain what I mean by real talk about racism, I would like to take a step back and say thank you. Thank you to everyone for giving me a chance. These are difficult conversations. If someone posts and says, oh, there's someone talking about this, this, and this, it could be fire, it could be heat and all this kind of thing. I think anybody who's come into my space knows that I try my best to offer something constructive and loving and educational. And for anyone who has given me that chance, given me their time, which I totally do not take for granted, wanted to show my appreciation. Thank you to anyone who agrees with my, and we have a similar perspective, and has sent affirming messages, whether privately or publicly. That's always worth it. If you have a content creator, send them an affirming message. I really definitely appreciate any message that I get along those lines. I really value when folks say that I've provided some education and I've helped them, they've been uncomfortable with the situation, but they haven't really had the words or had the way to explain it. But then they watch a couple of my videos and they go, oh, right, that's how I can explain it to someone else. That's how I can think about it myself. So for anyone that I have had a positive impact on, I really appreciate that interchange. That's great. For folks who've disagreed, I've had a lot of people come in, coming into my comments, my home in good faith. Especially my European brothers and sisters, because I'm an American, I'm Puerto Rican, I have one perspective. And so I have folks that come in and they have shared in long posts. And then I will give a long post in response and we'll go back and forth. And maybe we get a little bit heated and emotional. These are things that we care about. I hope that at the end of the day, we emerge from the majority of those conversations respecting one another and valuing one another's perspective, even where we disagree. So whether you agree, disagree, or you are along for the entertainment ride, I want to express my appreciation for anyone who has devoted their valuable time and attention to what I'm doing here on Good Trouble. If you want to support, the best way that you can do so is to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment, and share the information out to your friends and your family and all the social medias. I'm not going to monetize the space. As valuable as it would be to try to build things up on that end, it would help out a little bit. I've made the decision that in terms of the discussions, in terms of the ideas, the center of what I'm trying to do, not just Good Trouble, but with Shelf Help and everything that I do here on Shelf Stories, it just doesn't feel right. I want to keep this space as free of that as possible so that we can keep room open for us to have a better connection and we can understand one another a little bit more. So the best way you can support is keep doing what you're doing, liking, subscribing, and watching and just chatting. I really appreciate it. So please indulge me for just a second. I imagine Shelf Stories as me being on this big adventure story, beginning in January and getting into 40 different Good Trouble scenarios, coming close to the fire, dangerous situations, and emerging hopefully older and wiser as a result. Like any good adventure story that has ups and downs, I would like to get to a more intimate, serene, quiet moment. These 3 videos are my attempt at a more direct and intimate conversation. The conversation is with one of the dramatis personae of my little adventure, which is the nice, moderate, white guy. I get a lot of comments, and I'll show one in just a second, from people who self-identify as nice, moderate white guys who don't know what this is all about. Why am I causing trouble? Why are we having so much trouble in the board gaming space? And so I would like to shine a spotlight not to set up a firing squad, which is what usually happens, right? I say nice, smart white guys. That's usually like a derisive thing when someone like me says it. Let us not go down that road. I would like to open a space for a kind and non-judgmental setting of the scene so that we can have a real conversation about what's really going on here. At the end of the day, this is about change. We do want board gaming to change. We do want board gaming to be more inclusive of folks like myself and folks in marginalized perspectives. Our game tables are more diverse. The people making games are more diverse. The people that run conventions and are all throughout the production cycle of a board game, getting them to our table, that is more representative of the larger culture. And nice, moderate white guy, you don't see that there's a problem. Like, we can do that, or are already on our way to that. And marginalized folks like myself and so many people who are in the space, who have done this way longer than I am, are trying to say that we're not. There's some progress that has been made, but for the most part, that we're not nearly as far as we could be. And this isn't just me complaining. I have some stats to back this up. So I want to thank Tanya Pobeda, who was a guest on my show at one of the Good Trouble episodes that I've mentioned before, talking about just raw demographics. What are we talking about here when we talk about the gaming space? She did research on game covers, majority whites, and also majority male. We're talking about folks who are designing the games. A bigger majority than that, white European males. So something along the lines of 92.6%. If you take the top 400 games on BGG as a sample size, which I think is a pretty good sample size, 92.6% white males is a lot in terms of the center of power. So in a lot of ways, this video is also for the game creators, especially for the game creators as well, because y'all got the power. And I was tooling around on Shelf Stories Analytics. I'm also part of the One Stop Co-op Shop, tooling around on their analytics a little bit. This is raw data. We're not manipulating things here. I was like blown away when I first saw that. 95%. And this is on Shelf Stories. Shelf Stories, I've done so many things in terms of inclusion of women, the women creators panel in gaming, lots of different discussions about misogyny and the different harassment things that have come up. So I've tried to make my space as welcoming for women as I possibly can. And it's a 95-5 skew, which says that we just have a lot of work to do, A, and B, that the center of the gaming universe is the nice, moderate, white male. I don't have a problem with that. I have Shelf Stories here, but I'm a video reviewer on the Dice Tower. I work as a freelancer. Tom Vassell is a nice, moderate, white guy. And I'm on the One Stop Co-op Shop aforementioned, and it is me and 5 white dudes. I don't have a problem with that. These gentlemen are my brothers. I love them so much, and I love so many folks out there in the gaming universe. So when I isolate nice, moderate white guys, it isn't to set up a straw man. It is to try to talk to a central demographic. It is try to kind of isolate a mindset and to talk directly to it and try to come together. And help us see one another. So then I would like to read a comment. And I think this comment is very reflective of a lot of comments that I get and encapsulates a lot of the difficulties that nice, moderate white guys have with the current moment we have experiencing here in board gaming and then culture in general. Quote, "In today's world, it sometimes feels like you have to be careful all the time. Not entirely my point of view, but this is a common thought process of people around me. As a white European straight male, I sometimes feel like I can't do anything right. I play this game, this group lectures me about racism and slavery and how I should be aware of my horrible ancestors. I watch a movie, some point a finger that I shouldn't watch movies without some LGBTQ representation because that's offensive for them to be left out when they're part of society, etc., etc. Sometimes people feel like they have to change everything in order to be politically correct, and often they just want a little breathing room and say, hey, I know there's some history here, but please, can I just enjoy a game, movie, theme park, etc., without having to think about all these things? Why am I not allowed to think it's just a game? Why does it always have to be more? So this person is speaking from the perspective of, let's just play games. And I've had that direct comment in other contexts. It's a hobby, Jason. It's a pastime. I'm for all the multiculturalism stuff. I absolutely support everything and all my different things that I do in life. But in my gaming, please leave me alone. I don't want to feel judged. And so for this video, I'm going to address that sense of that the nice moderate white guy feels judged. Judged because of what they say, judged because of what they play, and judged because of things they can't change, like the color of their skin. Why we do talk about whiteness so much. I will address all three of these in turn. I'm going to offer kindness, non-judgment in all three cases, and I'm going to ask for, in return, some kindness, non-judgment in these three cases as well. So let's engage in a real conversation. All right, so let's get into it. First point of kindness. This feeling that a nice, moderate white guy like yourself cannot say things in public, can't share their perspective, can't share their opinion without another person coming in and breathing some kind of fire. So the next board game controversy happens. This game's problematic. This game's problematic. All this are happening. Nice white moderate male pipes up in the chat and says, really, I can understand the perspective. Let's talk about it, but let's really focus on the game, please. It's what we all here for. And here comes the fire, the isms, the racist, sexist, homophobic, misogynist, ableist, all these things. And I remember a couple weeks ago on Twitter, I was having a conversation just on an independent thing. I thought we were having like a good focused discussion on an issue. And then someone will come in or someone did come in and say, oh, that sounds a little bit ableist. Let's talk about this other perspective. And I'm sitting there going, like, we're having a discussion here. Where did we get this big societal concept that all of a sudden, kind of changed the conversation, creates all this guilt? And I felt like, okay, now I have to be careful what I say, or else, it'll like the conversation will just go there again. And I drifted away because I didn't know what to say at that point. So I feel that. Nice water, white guy. I feel that, really. I think that our side has gotten a little bit too used to using the ism hammer, right? I think that it is a social media product. You can have however many points of discussion that are nice and, moderate. And in fact, most internet chatter, as I find, is actually pretty positive and constructive. But then it is the negative parts or the kind of guilt-inducing or attention-grabbing parts that get all the attention and the clicks. And all of a sudden that just like takes the conversation in a totally different direction, no matter how much reasonableness was said. 100 points of reasonableness, one ism can just drive things away. So I think that it's part of social media, part of just our training from college. Yes, we learned a lot of stuff in college for whatever reason, right? I think that the aggressive side does lean a little bit too heavily on the ism hammer. I'll give that to you. I want to understand the anger underneath. And that's what you want to understand too. Hopefully you want to understand. That's why you're watching the video. As opposed to just condemning it outright and saying, oh, don't do that. Where's it coming from? Why does the progressive side sometimes seem so angry and quick to jump to some of these things? So I have a couple of thoughts about that. The first one, and probably the most important one in terms of context, in terms of explaining this anger, why we have so much anger here on the progressive side, or seeming to. We need to have a serious and frank discussion about harassment in gaming. Why are we so frustrated? Because we experience harassment on a very regular basis. It's something, nice water, well, that you don't see because the harassing elements aren't aimed at you. It's usually other white guys that are doing it. And yeah, I know I say white guys and, it's like, oh my God, they're going to call me a harasser. All these people are calling every white man harasser. That's why I can't say anything. And I'm going to give you grace. Here, have some grace. I'm going to say that the person with whom I'm speaking with this video is not a harasser. Perfectly nice person who has an open table and is welcoming to all sorts of diversity, who celebrates diversity. I'm going to give you that. Okay. The issue for us on our side is, are you speaking out against other elements that aren't so nice? Are you noticing that a woman streamer who's streaming a board game or streaming any kind of other game, or someone on YouTube gets comments about their body or their voice or what they're wearing, and very intimate questions about, oh, what are you wearing? What's your, what color is your this, that, and the other thing? Are you speaking out against that? Are you speaking out against the person who, whenever somebody is different comes into the space, let's say it's a woman coming into like war game or mini gaming, something that with a higher barrier of entry, there's that questioning. Oh, what are you here for? What do you know? And it's almost like the woman has to earn their spot. And some women do, to, their credit, some women do. The question is, why is that person there? Why does that person feel the need to, be the gatekeeper, right? And we get what we're getting. I just showed you the analytics, 95% male, 5% female. The 5% came in and they're great. But why is that person allowed to continue in that behavior? And why, nice white water male, are you not speaking up against that behavior? Well, I know why. You don't experience it. They're cool with you. It's usually two white guys, right? And maybe you're even their friend, and you give all sorts of grace and charity to that person. And I'm going to be able to quote here. So, I get it. I try to use my voice, and I try to use it in a constructive way. I got problems with games, but I'm always coming up with solutions and answers, all that kind of thing. And then I get this. Shelf stories are racist. And that's the tippy top of what I get. There's private stuff that I get all the time about how I'm ruining fun and, I'm this, that, and the third thing. And I don't even get as nearly as much as other folks get, especially women. Oh, I would not want to be a woman in gaming. I really wouldn't sometimes. So then, what's the response? What's the response when we say we're tired of experiencing this harassment? I'm going to go back to the quote that I read even leading into this part of the discussion. And this is in reference to somebody that's coming back at me with all caps talking about my criticisms of Puerto Rico. Quote, just try to think that the person who used the caps or whatever maybe just had a stressful day, wanted to relax and got tired of the huge list of things he or she needs to change in order to be seen as a good person. The charity, the grace that is offered to people who are engaged in unacceptable, exclusionary, gatekeepery, overly ownership feeling behaviors towards marginalized people who are just trying to articulate that we have an issue. There are barriers to us, mental, emotional, physical barriers to us just sitting down and playing a game. They're not what you experience. We could have that discussion, but then you have this energy that feels that radical ownership and feels threatened when we say something. It feels like we're taking something away by saying something. And so they, no, assertion of power. This is how it is. Are you, white, moderate, male, speaking up about that? Do you have allyship of that? Or do you think that we're the problem? That we're angry because, and not realizing that the anger is in response to something real. So let me throw the following grace and kindness out there. You are not the harasser. You are not the problem that some people make you feel like you are. You're not. Your table is open. Your table is open to women and marginalized people, and wonderful gaming is waiting if we engage with you. We're letting you know that there are harassers, people who feel like they have radical ownership of gaming. It should be white and male in a certain way. That person is standing in between, for many of us, the door and your table. I'd like to invite you to consider, are you talking to that person and telling them to kind of move out of the way? You're excluding people? Or is that person your friend? Are they getting your grace? Are they getting more of your grace than the marginalized person trying to come in? And I'll tell you right now, that the harasser or the person that feels that radical ownership of the space, they'll listen to nice, moderate white guys more than they'll listen to me. I'm a troublemaker. I'm Shelf Stories, aka racist. they'll listen to you, moderate white guy, way more. So this is a request on my part, asking for kindness on my part. Please speak up more about harassment and exclusionary gatekeeping behavior in the hobby, and conversations with more and more progressive-minded folks will go a little bit better, I think. And so before I close this one out, I wanted to address another particular type of difficulty in terms of like, okay, can you say what you got to say? This one is, let's just keep the harassment one out for now. I said what I got to say about that. I think even that sometimes a moderate person will just ask a question. You know, it's like, okay, what's going on here? I don't understand this. And there, you'll get, I don't want to answer your question. Why do I have to explain it? I don't want to be the one that explains it to you. Or maybe you'll even get blocked, right? I hear that from moderate white guys all the time. Why are they blocking me? They don't want to discuss. The left doesn't want to discuss. They just want to be in their echo chamber, and, they don't want to deal with people who are asking genuine questions. Okay. I would like to invite folks who feel that way. How are you asking the question? Where is the ask? Where is the action step? When a moderate white person comes into speaking in a cultural thing, is the question asked in a way that puts the burden of action on the marginalized person? Explain this to me. Do this, be more welcoming, so I get that a lot of like, well, I mean, I'm already doing what I need to do. My table is open. So why, you need to either explain something to me, why it's this way or whatever. And there are so many folks that are like, okay, I'm already doing what I got to do. And I'm asking you to do this. And they're asking in good faith, they're asking in kindness, but there's I hope that you can see that, we're already trying. And we've already we're bearing wounds or just trying to get ourselves known, trying to penetrate people's interpretive cloud or whatever it is. And there's a fatigue that sets in. There are other nice moderate white guys that don't ask in a spirit of charity, that don't ask in a spirit of curiosity. They're asking the question, but really the question is a veil for shut up, just play. Why are we talking about this? We can say, why are we talking about this? Or we can say, why are we talking about this? So that's another one. So it's hard to see, hard to tell. The way that, if you truly wanted to bridge that divide, I'll offer this kindness to you to kind of say what can help is show that you're willing to act. There's a difference between please explain this and, hey, I watched these couple of videos, or I follow your training, your argument. I have some questions here. ... That will go so much better. Shows action, shows that you are, interested in a connection and not just throwing a question out there because of whatever. So in your questioning or in your opinion making, try to offer grace, offer that you are trying to understand what's underlying some of the feelings, the harassment, all that kind of stuff. And if you're asking, try to ask in a way that there's a action on both ends. I've done this, or I'm willing to do this. Let's do this, as opposed to I am doing everything I got to do. You explain or you do something. That second thing won't go well. That first one might go well. That's the kindness I'll offer. Kindness number one. So let's talk about kindness number two. It specifically has to deal with what that post that I mentioned before. The issue of, if I like a problematic thing, does that make me a bad person? If I like Puerto Rico, does that make me a racist against Puerto Ricans? If I like this dungeon crawl, or this other game with scantily clad women going through the dungeon, does that make me a sexist or a misogynist? All these different, all the kerfuffles that we get into. Am I a bad person for liking whatever the game is? And when I began, I definitely leaned towards, and I admit this, I lean towards like, okay, you're playing Puerto Rico, that's a problem. You like Puerto Rico the way it is, that's a problem. And what I would do is, I'd see, someone who's enjoying Puerto Rico, and I'd, go into a forum, like, hey, look, this is what's going on. Thinking that if I explained it properly, maybe they don't know, and if I explained it, they'll come to realize the colonization and they'll stop playing. It didn't go that way. I would say it and then it would be like, well, what are you talking about? I'll leave my game alone. It's like, but don't you see it's the brown chips and the colonization and they put the year on there and it's history and just is, kept on running into that same issue. I don't see it. Jason, you're putting it in there. It's not inherently there. And I would say, it's there. You're just not seeing this. You're willfully blind. And I would get really heated. It's like, okay, I'm, getting frustrated that like even in the face of the best explanation that I can offer, they're not changing their behavior at all. And I'm like, okay, what's wrong with them? The evolution that I've gone through is nothing is wrong with them inherently. They just don't have the same life experience I do. They just don't have the same emotional resonance I do. Their brains may not work the same way. They process things differently. And so, I've tried to become more accepting that like just because somebody enjoys something that I find problematic doesn't make them a bad person at all. It just makes them different. I think it's unfortunate. I think there's, I'm going to continue to articulate it, but I'm being way more careful about not saying that the person is bad for playing it. They just don't have the resonance. And the point really came home to me when I was talking with another friend, and this is a completely separate conversation, but it definitely relates, about horror movies. I can't stand horror movies. They're gross. Slasher movies, gore, all that kind of thing. I feel too much empathy for the victims. I hear their screams and it does something to me. It's like, how could somebody like horror? But then my friend loves it, watches all the good stuff and sequels and can't wait for, new reboots of all their favorite horror franchises. And they said to me once, like, dude, it's fake. The director yells cut and everybody stands up and goes to lunch and they clean up the ketchup, the fake blood off the floor, and it's all fine. And it really clicked for me there where, that person likes what I consider to be difficult entertainment and they're able to kind of like just process it in a way that just cuts through the fakery. And it's like, okay, I'm just watching, camera tricks and actors who are perfectly fine. When someone's playing a game in Puerto Rico, I may see the reinstantiation of colonization, but they see wood, cardboard, glory, points and gears turning. That's all they see. And that's should be fine. You look around and there's all sorts of people who like all sorts of questionable entertainment. Like horror, that's not so much in board games, but in terms of people who like horror as entertainment, true crime. I have a really difficult time with true crime, having worked in, crisis care and with victims and all that kind of stuff. But there are people who play Jack the Ripper and Letters from Whitechapel. They listen to the Serial podcast and all this other stuff. And it's like, I've come to accept this, that they are able to process their enjoyment of that and have that distance. And I'm going to try the best that I can to not stigmatize the fact that they're processing that content not in a way that I wouldn't. I have empathies that they don't have. That doesn't make them less human, because it also rebounds on me. I love Freedom, the Underground Railroad. And I have a lot of, African-American gamers especially, who have a big problem with that game. They don't want a game about slavery at all. There's other issues that are developed in the naming of that game. As a matter of fact, I used to have Freedom, the Underground Railroad displayed in a lot of my earlier videos, but thanks to some discussions that I've had, I've taken it out because it makes them uncomfortable to think about that. I'm going to continue to play it. I really love it for the education that it offers, but I have a different resonance than they have. So am I a bad person for playing a slavery game? I don't want that stigma. I don't want that label. But I want to find a way to honor the people who feel that way. So I'm trying hard, people. Trying hard to articulate my issues about games, but not in a way that stigmatizes the gamer. Separate the game from the gamer as much as I can and put it out in the world that I would like to offer that as education as well. So that's my kindness to you, white moderate person who likes to play Puerto Rico just the way it is. Okay, fine. I will have a different discussion. I'll find a way to express myself so that I'm not going to stigmatize you for liking it. There's other ways to address that issue, and I'll try to pursue those. All right, so I've offered a kindness. I would like to ask for a kindness. My favorite comments are when I have one of these Good Trouble videos. They're like, I don't see the problem that you see, Jason, but I acknowledge that you see the problem. So then tolerance for the fact that we do have different life experiences. That's the kindness I've offered. That's the kindness that I'm asking for. And if I say I see a problem in a board game, it's not light. It's not just, everything is terrible, everything's offensive or whatever it is. Then I'm coming at it from a point of historical memory. I'm coming at it from a point of empathy for certain situations. And if something is truly crossing the line, that makes me stand up for something that is for a good reason. So then I would like to be offered that kindness as well. I think a lot of posters go the line of, I don't see a problem, therefore there's not a problem. It's your problem. You're seeing it. You're putting it in there, Jason. It's not there. It's cardboard and wood. You see you one thing, I see another. Please don't feel threatened by that. I'm not here to tell you what to do or take your game away. Let's acknowledge that we see different things and come up with a better conversation about that. That's what I'm asking for. And also, can we chill with the insults, please? This was a comment that was given in another perspective, talking about cheerless nannies. I've been called tyrant. I've been called all these other words. And it's like, let's acknowledge that we have different life experiences. That is the kindness that I'm willing to show, and that is the kindness that I would like to ask for in this respect. So now we're at kindness number 3, which is the most difficult one of all to talk about. That is about race itself and the racial category of white. I have specifically used the construction of the nice white moderate, and I can see that there's a segment of the watchership that is going, oh, he's doing it again. He's talking about whiteness again. He is, why are we talking about that? That's, he hates us for the color of our skin. That's what that means. At the end of the day, stripping away all the niceness. If you're using that category, you're introducing division and hatred, based on something I can't change. And, I've used, whiteness and white people, and I used the word caucasity in a video in a very specific context, but there were a couple of folks that responded, you went on for 40 minutes and I was really vibing what you were saying, but then you're dropping these racial bombs right in the middle of the discourse. It just makes me doubt whether you're really serious or whether you're just here to continue to cause division and make us feel bad for who we are. And that's actually part of what we're going through here in America in terms of critical race theory, CRT, which is a thing that gets said a lot in forums. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It was a theory that came from law school, but it's definitely gotten reinterpreted to mean the sense that, white folks feel they are being guilted. That, especially in schools, that we're teaching our young men and women to hate themselves because of the color of their skin, that they bear the sins of their fathers, colonialism, slavery, exclusion, all this other stuff. White people did it and white people continue to do it, and we must feel guilt and sadness about ourselves and constantly, being browbeaten. And that's what people think is critical race theory, and that's what people think that I'm doing here in my Good Trouble videos. And so how am I going to dig kindness out of that morass? A morass that I am contributing to by continuing to talk about this stuff. And my way forward is a practice that I've engaged in on Shelf Stories the entire time, which is to distinguish the person from the practice as far as I can. And in this particular case, I'm going to lean as far into that distinction as I possibly can. There is white people, and then there is whiteness people. There is the person with skin color that is white, that is something that can't change. I will try to play with you and, host you on my channels and interact with you. All the good stuff that I've done the entire time. And then there is whiteness, which is a cultural thing, a mindset thing. white folks are in the middle of the hobby. As I've discussed before, demographically, there's no arguing this stuff. The whiteness idea comes in when we regard that centrality of white folks as kind of inevitable, when challenges, criticisms, observations about that reality get pushed back on the kind of assumption that criticism is cancellation. And that when we criticize, well, that's a lot of white people in the center of the hobby. What are you saying? What are you doing? In that kind of defense of the status quo is a pretty big part of what we refer to as whiteness. And that's a cultural thing. It's not the color of your skin. And it has a couple of real world effects that I'd like to articulate. Number one, because of the centrality in board gaming and also in the larger culture, the world responds, society responds differently to whiteness, white skin, white names, white ideas than it does to marginalized folks. I'm going to be really careful here because I'm trying to stick to observable facts. So there's a lot of, I'll bring up a concept of implicit bias, right? That's a way forward to kind of understand how whiteness functions and why I say the society prefers that. So it is an observable fact that if, folks have money and they're willing to spend money or they have something to offer and it's like, I'm going to offer to the white guy or the black guy, our society has a lean, not a huge rejection, not as we had in Jim Crow days, but we have a lean towards offering it to the white guy. Example, Airbnb. This is from a couple of years ago. They did this study. Black families would apply for houses, and they go, no, there's no vacancies. Sorry about that. And then they would reapply an hour later with a different photo, or get a white friend to do it. And it's like, oh, we have an opening. Come on in. And that happened to the tune of 12 to 16% of the time over a very, very long course of study. And that's just one little example. And in board gaming, I've heard Eric Lang, the designer, has openly mused that he is a successful designer partly because his name, Eric Lang. What if his name was Devontae Lang? Would he be as successful? Someone coming into a game store, looking at a row of games, and they see, a certain name, or they see another name, they're going to choose that name that's more familiar. Is that racist? No, it's not racist. It's just something that we do unconsciously. This is implicit. This isn't explicit. I'm not calling them, you're a racist for not wanting to play Devontae Lang's game. It's just, if you don't know, if there's no context for it, there is a preference to go towards the more familiar thing. That is society responding to whiteness in a more friendly way than it does to marginalized folks. I want to be able to talk about that without triggering the accusations and the heat and the fire. And I know that is so hard, but I'm going to continue to try. Another aspect in which this plays out, I'm going to go back to that quote. It is the one I quoted from BGG. It is the gift that keeps on giving. Hey, I know there's some history here, but please, can I just enjoy a game, movie, theme park attraction without having to think about all these things? I talk about that in the context of talking about this cultural mindset practice of whiteness, because what we find is that there's a tendency to want to forget. The center wants to forget how it became the center. Marginalized folks who, it isn't just about the history of violence or all the bad things, or thinking about a moral way. I think about it in a very material way. We're marginalized. We don't have as much stuff. I will talk a lot more about that in the next video. But this is a real material condition that we're talking about here. And there's a history to how we got here that we can't forget. But that center that wants to keep itself as a center, that a white sense of centrality, part of the way that it maintains itself is it wants to be forgetful and not talk about some of these things and just want to play. So it's such a hard thing because it's, there's a cultural tendency to want to forget, but then there's the human person there that just wants to play a game, and they do the best that they can. So that is the sense in which there's a huge tension that I am trying to, kind of cut through. In terms of Good Trouble, this is like a best hits episode at this point. I had an author. His name was Scott Woods a couple of months ago. We talked about this distinction between whiteness and white people, and that he doesn't want to push that distinction too hard. It lets too many people off the hook. I was like, okay, there's whiteness and there's the white people. Let's talk about the white people and get rid of the whiteness. It's hard because you get enough white folks together, especially when they're at the center of the hobby and they have all the stuff. And it's like you're going to reinstantiate different aspects of whiteness. It's inevitable. I am willing to offer the kindness of pushing that distinction. At the end of the day, if I talk about, all this stuff, whiteness, caucasity, whatever I'm talking about, it is an invitation. White, moderate with white skin, who has a brain in their head and a heart in their chest, and that let's connect as people and let's question this mindset that excludes us. I truly believe that the mindset of whiteness does more to exclude us than anything that we're talking about. We are trying to deconstruct that as far as we possibly can. So an invitation to reconsider some practices that keep us divided. That is why I continue to talk about this stuff. Do you buy that? The only thing I can do is offer the kindness to be really clear about what I'm trying to do and to ask for a little bit of graceful interpretation that I am not hating you because of the color of your skin. I can promise you that. That's not going to get us anywhere. So that's the end of my video on kindness. I got to tell you, people, this was one of the most difficult videos that I've ever had to record, take after take after take after take, trying to split those differences, say what I have to say, and ask for the kindnesses that I think that our progressive side needs, but also in a way that really meets, white moderate folks or whoever I'm talking to, meets them where they're at and gets at as much of their concerns as I possibly could. I tried. If there's anything you get from the video, I'm really trying to bridge a gap here. And so that's the best that I can do. There are going to be some people that just say, you know what, just stop talking about race at all. Just that's it. Just work behind the scenes and, do whatever you have to do, but just, try not to put it out in the airwaves so much. And that is the ultimate kindness that I can do, according to some people. And that's, it's nothing I can do just because of the reality of it. The next two videos, I am going to get a little bit more difficult in terms of the subject matter. But the spirit of this episode is going to pervade anything that I say. Moving forward, it is about kindness, it is about education, it is about an invitation to truly engage in a multicultural society, which I believe in at the bottom of my heart. But having said that, let us get on in the next video to some truth. Hard talk about racism. If you could change your mind, you could change the world. So until next time, bye everybody.